Welcome back to the Sunday Scrum. I'm Carol McNeil. The U.S. president showed a more reflective side this week as yesterday's 100-day milestone approached. In an interview this week with Reuters, he seemed almost mournful about what he called his previous life. He expressed surprise at the lack of privacy that comes with the highest political office in the world. He says he misses going out to restaurants, even just being able to go for a drive by himself. And then there's the matter of the presidential workload.
This is more work than in my previous life. I thought it would be easier. I thought it was more of I'm a details-oriented person, I think you would say that. But I do miss my old life. I like to work, so that's not a problem. But this is actually more work.
Katie, do you feel sorry for the American president?
Really, not even a little bit. I don't know how you could not know how much work it was going to. And if you look back at the coverage of sort of Donald Trump's campaign from, inexplicable oddity to virtual certainty to actually winning, at every point along the way, it was being raised, the issue of, does he really want this job? Does he understand that it means giving up all of this freedom and a whole lot of what he's able to do as kind of, this self-made guy who swans around and does pretty much as he pleases? The writing was on the wall. He's the guy who decided to stick around, and the fact that it's living up to exactly what it was billed to be, not a lot of sympathy here.
John?
But yeah, we can't forget this is a man in his 70s who has committed, assuming he runs for a second term, to spending almost this entire decade in what is the toughest job in the world. Maybe a job that he never really expected he was going to have in the first place. Maybe he didn't think he would win the nomination. Maybe, certainly, didn't think he was going to win the election. And now he's stuck here. And pride says he has to keep going. But it may, and this is sheer speculation on my part, it may be one reason why Kevin O'Leary decided to drop out of the Conservative leadership race. He discovered watching Donald Trump that A, it's great for your ratings to run for the leadership of a political party, but B, you better get out just in case you might win.
Yeah, you know what? there is that indication. There are some people that said to your own paper, John, the Globe and Mail, that said they're never going to work for another businessman again who doesn't know what they're getting into in politics. And there have been a few. I mean, and I talked to Jonathan Wilkinson, the MP, the Liberal MP for North Vancouver yesterday, and he was a CEO for many years and ran his company, and he said it's a big learning curve, that a lot of people, it can be very frustrating when they get into politics. They don't seem to understand what's required of the job, that they can't just give orders without numerous implications, both political and some that don't make sense. Susan.
Well, I'm just remembering the case of David Emerson, too, who was a very esteemed business leader from British Columbia and joined was wooed into the Liberal caucus by Paul Martin and then subsequently abandoned ship. An impolitic move, to say the least, and that sort of damaged his reputation. But he, the most successful models for people who make the jump, I'm thinking in the olden days, a long time ago, of John McCallum, for example. He was with the Bank of
Nova Scotia.
I forget which Bank of Nova Scotia. Yep.
As an
they serve time. Yeah, they serve time first, usually either in a junior cabinet post or, as MPs for a while, or even in opposition, although it's harder to get them into opposition roles. The notion that you can jump right in at the very top and be successful. Brian Mulroney did it, I guess, arguably. Stephen Harper did it, although Stephen Harper did have a background in government.
He was the executive assistant to Deborah Gray for, John.
He was.
Yeah.
And an MP for a number of years as well. But I want to take issue with the David Emerson thing. David Emerson, I think, is the exact opposite of Donald Trump. This is a man who had a very successful career. He had spent some time as a senior public servant, but he had spent a number of years as a CEO. And he wanted to fix two things. He wanted to fix the softwood lumber dispute, at least temporarily, and he wanted to reorient Canada's trading relationship. The Liberals talked him into running. He went into Paul Martin's cabinet, began working on the European trade agreement, on Asian trade agreements, and other trade agreements. The Liberals are defeated. Stephen Harper says, why don't you just sort of stay in cabinet and keep doing your job? And David Emerson said, absolutely. I'm not here to warm a bench. I'm here to get these trade agreements done. So he couldn't have cared less whether he was working for the Conservatives or the Liberals. And by the way, he did reorient Canada's trading relationship. David Emerson is the exact opposite of Donald Trump. He's a guy who went in because he knew what it was he wanted to do, and he did it.
He had one thing that he had to do.
but I would suggest that in that particular case, he totally underestimated the fact that he horrified his constituents. There was just sort of mass outrage.
Exactly.
You can't just do that. Politics is not just like business. You can't just move to another company and take up a new role and everyone just says, oh, I'll just update my Rolodex and, you know, put his new information in them. That's not how it works. So in that sense, David Emerson also displayed that kind of stunning lack of understanding of the political dynamic. And I mean, in O'Leary's case, it is probably definitely for the best that he was barely even campaigning for the leadership. He was out of the country at least once a week. He would occasionally do these little tours of university. He was in BC for a bit, but he wasn't putting in nearly the hours as the other 13 now contenders in the race. Can you imagine if he had won and he would have been expected to spend the next 2 years trying to get the Conservative Party in a position to actually challenge the Liberals? It was he definitely made the right call in dropping out because it was not going to get any easier.
I think he made the right call, but there's also a certain amount of hypocrisy on the part of the parliamentary press gallery on this. We spent months decrying Kevin O'Leary that he's not bilingual, that he's not in the country, that he's just a charismatic opportunist trying to capture the Conservative Party. And then he finally says, all right, you're right, I'm leaving. And then we look at the rest of the field. Oh, they're so dull. There's nothing worth writing about. I mean, which one do you want, guys?
Well, I mean, we want it all, John.
His arrogance was stunning, really, and I never was convinced that there are enough Conservatives who would swallow that arrogance and just say, okay, you know, you've got no notable experience for this job, you don't speak French, even your business background and experience is, you know, mixed, your results have been mixed, and so here, why don't you lead our party? I just thought that the arrogance was absolutely stunning. He clearly wasn't prepared to serve an apprenticeship, you should pardon the expression either, you know? So I say good riddance.
Katie, do you think that Maxime Bernier is going to benefit from Kevin O'Leary leaving?
I don't. It's always possible. I don't think it will hurt him in any way. The big question, what no one really knows, is Kevin O'Leary's team claims to have brought in sort of tens of thousands of never-before Conservatives who joined the party just to vote for Kevin O'Leary. The question is, now that O'Leary is out, although he has suggested that they all support Bernier, do they fill out their ballot, put it in the mail, send it back in, or do they sort of say, oh, well, I like that O'Leary fellow, but if he's not running, I think I'm just going to back out away completely, in which case O'Leary's total impact on the race will be basically nil. So there are just so many variables in this particular way of electing a leader that it's impossible to know if it'll help Bernier. It won't hurt him. I think that's about all we can conclusively say, is it probably won't hurt Maxime Bernier.
Okay, John, what do you think?
I think that underestimates the circumstance. If in any leadership race you have two front runners and then a whole bunch of others, you know, jockeying for a position, and one of the two front runners drops out and throws his support behind the other front runner, then that front runner becomes a prohibitive favorite. I think we need to see, because Maxime Bernier himself has some very controversial positions on supply management, on getting the federal government out of all health care, on limiting equalization, on dismantling the CRTC and the CBC. There's a lot of stuff in there to raise your eyebrows at. The question is, can the other candidates in the field sort of rally around, and they're not going to, they're going to stay in. So can the voters rally around one of the other candidates in the field and say this person, this man or woman is the person who actually is a better alternative to Mr. Bernier? We only have 4 weeks left. People are already able to send in their ballots. I don't see that happening yet.
Yeah. Is there someone out there that you think, Susan, could actually? Do you think Bernier is a shoo-in, or do you think there's someone out there that can draw the attention of the Conservative Party?
The day after this race started, I predicted boldly on this program that Andrew Scheer was going to win. My faith was severely shaken over the course of the campaign. I'm still not convinced that he won't win. He's puckish, he's genial, he's well-liked, but he also has a brace of quite socially conservative positions. At this point, anybody who hasn't done this so far should really take a look at the websites of all of the remaining candidates to see what exactly they are proposing. And I think they'd find that Scheer's positions are quite right-wing, notwithstanding his harmless personality. Erin O'Toole, on the other hand, has a very moderate approach. For example, I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I believe that
I hope you're not.
Scheer, I think, is saying he's going to balance the budget in 2 years. So that could cause a lot of disruption and a lot of pain.
Here's how Andrew Scheer is making the distinction from Bernier, because it appears that people are trying to distinguish themselves now, not from Kevin O'Leary anymore, because he's gone, not Kelly Leitch, she's sort of dropped in the polls, but from Maxime Bernier. And here's how he is doing that.
My message to the broad section of our conservative movement is, with me, you get a positive approach to selling conservative messages in the next election. That's what was missing. You know, it wasn't that we weren't libertarian enough in the last election. I mean, we didn't lose because we weren't, we weren't promoting Frederick Bastiat and Adam Smith enough. You know, we lost because we failed to connect our policies in a positive way to reach that broader audience of Canadians, and that's what I can offer.
Katie, can he reach the broader audience of Canadians?
I think he's actually definitely got a better shot than Maxime Bernier, who absolutely takes a very, publicly very sort of flashily, shall we say, libertarian stance. That said, I think that Andrew Scheer he's been underwhelming in his performance thus far. Mm-hmm. He really there'll be debates where you'll go 45 minutes and you forget he's even on stage. He really hasn't had that kind of dominance. And yeah, there's 4 weeks left, so he can still kind of surge out there. But at this point, I would say that Erin O'Toole definitely has a shot at becoming the not Bernier choice, as does Andrew Scheer, as even perhaps does Lisa Raitt. So it's by no means, I don't think it's over yet, although if I were a betting woman and if I were forced to lay down money right now, it would definitely be on Bernier.
And about 30 seconds left. John, who's your not Bernier candidate?
I think it, spoiler alert, I'll be writing on this for tomorrow's Globe. I think it boils down to Erin O'Toole. Competent, centrist, managerial. Andrew Scheer, puckish is a wonderful word, Susan, though socially conservative. As for Lisa Raitt, I'm afraid she doesn't speak French, and I'm afraid that rules her out. Otherwise, she would be a very credible candidate. So for me, it's either Scheer or O'Toole as the anybody but Bernier candidate, if indeed they're able to stop him at all.